Hello there, and welcome to Gooner U, where there are no degrees because the learning never stops. I'm Dove, a TA here at Gooner U, and my friend Keith is our stalwart distinguished professor of Arsenal and football studies. This week featured a mostly meaningless match. In the Champions League, it was matchday 6 against PSV at their stadium, and we had a Premier League match number 17 versus Brighton, home at the Emirates. Hello, Keith.
Hi, Dove. I'm surprised you said mostly meaningless. I'm not really sure the modifier
what
is
shred of
there.
meaning I found in it.
I mean, in a purely existential sense, none of this really matters. But you know what? That's so. Good night, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm hedging a little bit because I realize that the points it's like whose line is it anyway? The points don't matter.
Yeah, and we'll dig into this. We'll sort of talk about this, I think, with the game. Perhaps discussing the Champions League as a whole is a better way to talk about a game whose best descriptor is it happened. This is a game that took place.
We'll get there. A little bit of follow-up. I brought up in the past noticing the particular pinnies that players warming up on the sidelines were wearing and wondered if they were given out by the competition or if each team provides them. I can say definitely, because I was looking for things to pay attention to during this PSV match, definitely the pinnies were provided by the Champions League competition because they had the Champions League stars on the back and it had the Champions League insignia on the front of it. And it was one team, like each team got their own colors. One color for PSV, a different color for us, but they were definitely provided by them. So Premier League may not do that. I don't think we came to a definite answer on that, but Champions League definitely does. So
I'm wondering now, seeing it written in our notes there, is that actually the word pinnies? I felt it was always pennies, and you just get told that as a youth player, like, here, put these pennies on. Okay, and like you don't even really think about it. Is that actually the word?
Yeah, I believe so. I'm now looking it up. So look for some real-time follow-up as I get an answer on this. But while I look that up, why don't you let me know what happened with our national team this past week or a couple weeks ago now?
I guess this was last week. We, one of those things we put in the notes, but we were so anxious to talk about the games of last week, that mostly the Luton game, not so much the Villa one, but we neglected to mention internationally the draw for next summer's Copa America took place. That's going to be typically the South American Championship, now this year acting as an America's Championship, containing, of course, will ultimately be 6 teams from CONCACAF from North America to go along with the 10 from South America. Big one for us, of course, is the draw for the U.S. They were drawn into a group with Uruguay, Panama, and Bolivia. Admittedly, Uruguay was the team out of pot 2 that I kind of didn't want, but that's okay. That's okay. That match is going to happen. It looks like that's going to be our third game of the group. So hopefully by that point we'll have beaten both Bolivia and Panama, 2 games that we ought to win, and be in good position to advance out of that. They've announced they've got everything lined up. We mentioned, I know for your sake, obviously Argentina. It has their group lined up. They will play their second match day at MetLife Stadium down near you, or up near you, I guess, from my perspective. They'll play Chile, which is kind of a fun rematch from the last time the Copa America was in the U.S. back in 2016. Those two played in the final, which the Chileans won on a shootout. Chile has regressed substantially since then. They're sort of a golden generation of players have sort of aged out, and they're not nearly as good. And that would be a point against Argentina would be a heck of a result.
Sure.
So they'll play that game there. There's a couple games here in Houston, including Mexico, Jamaica. Oh boy, Mexico in Houston! What a surprise. And there's another one, Colombia, Paraguay, which does look like a fun game. I did also notice that East Rutherford will be hosting one of the semifinals involving the teams from Group A and Group B. So you might see Argentina again, or probably will see Argentina again, assuming they reach the semifinals of the tournament. Houston will get the winner of Group A and the runner-up of Group B in the quarterfinals. So, if you're if you're interested, if you're not in either of our two cities, New York or Houston, you can look up on your own time which one's closest to you, and enjoy paying through the nose for what should be. I mean, I'm joking about the price. Well, I'm not joking about the price. It will be expensive, but which should be a really big and a good tournament. I'm excited. The Copa America is a lot of fun. To play with these kinds of this caliber of teams, and certainly for the U.S. not getting. The U.S. is not going to get a lot of high quality games competitively between now and the World Cup. This is a really good opportunity for us to sort of test ourselves and see where we are, coming into, see where we are going into the World Cup. So,
right. You mentioned East Rutherford. That's where Rutgers is, right? Where you and I attended debate competition, I think?
No, that was New. Well, Rutgers itself, I believe, is in Piscataway, at least the main campus. I believe we were in New Brunswick.
Maybe it was New Brunswick.
East Rutherford is where the Meadowlands is located.
Oh, okay.
It pretty, as far as I can tell, it doesn't actually exist outside of the Meadowlands complex.
It's its own little town.
I might be overstating that, but it's a pretty. I mean, you've been there, obviously. It's a pretty big complex. It's used to have Giant Stadium. Now it's MetLife, even though I keep calling it Giant Stadium. It's got the arena that used to be home to the New Jersey Devils and the New Jersey Nets before they both moved to other places. There's a big horse racing track there. There's that. It was called Xanadu, whatever that thing is, the ugliest looking building you've ever seen is out there. So yeah, it's an I don't know what else is actually in what constitutes the town of East Rutherford, or for example, if there's a West Rutherford or just Rutherford, I don't know. But right there off just an exit off the highway. So
right. Yeah, I was drawing at straws trying to think of where I knew that from, because names in New Jersey I haven't been to too many different places, so trying to cross off in my head the different things that it could be, and I picked the wrong one.
Alternately, if you've just driven down the New Jersey Turnpike, you've been to a lot of places in New Jersey, just
that's true,
through them. But anyway.
So, some real-time follow-up on the term penny. So it is penny. I had spelled it wrong in the notes. So a single penny is Pinny, and multiple would be Y to I and add ES, right? And apparently it is a short form of pinafore. So Pinafore, a pinafore, which apparently is an English style of garment typically worn by kids, where it's a sleeveless apron that goes over your clothing, right? So that does describe the way that pennies in sports are used. So I have links to pinafore on Wikipedia, and then also penny from the Cambridge English Dictionary, which seemed like an appropriate place to source for something about English football. So,
which I'm pretty sure that's also the name of a Gilbert and Sullivan opera, if I recall. One of the more famous ones, I think. The fact that I know what it is suggests that it's a pretty well-known one. But knowing what that is now sort of really changes the meaning of that a lot. Again, I've only heard of this. I don't actually know anything about it, although it's got, I'm sure, one or two songs that I've heard of before somewhere.
Yeah.
But anyway, that probably says more about my cultural upbringing than anything else. Anyway,
we're really looking for things to talk about this week.
That's a lot of weird English tangents. Well, look, the other options we could talk about this PSV Eindhoven game, but let's be honest, we don't remember any of it, do we?
Yeah, no, not very much. I mean, do you want to talk about the one or two things worth talking about in this match before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, we should say there are a couple of things I thought were intriguing early on. I mean, obviously, for people who don't know, which at this point, I'm not sure why you're watching, but PSV and Arsenal, 1-1 draw. We finished our Champions League group, 4 wins, a draw, and a loss, which is pretty good, I think. Good job, us. Interesting. This was a game both teams walked into, and none of it was going to matter. Arsenal was going to win the group. PSV was going to finish in second in the group. And so everything was lined up for that. Really, the only thing that probably seemed to, I guess, potentially be interesting in terms of something to play for from either side's perspective, PSV is, I believe they're currently on the season unbeaten at home. They're currently, wow. Yeah, wow, I just looked up. They are 16 wins out of 16 in the Dutch league this season.
Wow.
They're very good. They haven't lost They haven't lost at all. They have actually the only loss they have a a couple draws in the Champions League. The only loss they have was the first group day of the Champions League when we beat them 4-0 at the Emirates.
Right.
So they're pretty good. I know I talked about this a little bit. We kind of had, it seems the general belief was we kind of had a soft Champions League group. Maybe not. Maybe getting a 4-0 win over PSV actually does speak a little bit to our quality, perhaps. So pretty good team, but again, nothing to play for. Some interesting lineup choices. Obviously, a good deal of rotation certainly from the weekend, which wasn't a surprise. Aaron Ramsdale got the start in goal, so good on him for making his Champions League debut.
Yeah, and 6 minutes in, he had to call over for medical attention. We were wondering if he'd even be able to finish this match, which he did.
Yeah, But also, perhaps more interesting than that, because I think we talked about that last week. We were hoping Ramsdale would get in there. That would have been good, and he did, and that was nice. Interesting, though, to see Saliba and Gabriel both getting the start in central defense. It wouldn't have surprised me to see one or the other of them in the lineup. I'm a bit surprised to have seen both of them in the lineup, especially given a lot of our lineup was a bit rotated. We got who's in the. We have a Cedric sighting, which was it's been a while. Mohamed Elneny was playing. Jorginho, Jakub Kiwior was there. Trossard, Nketiah, and Reece Nelson. I mean, we really had, we're really rolling out our sort of our second lineup in this game. And there was a lot of talk early on about some of the youth guys, Ethan Nwaneri, Ruel Walters, Lino Souza, maybe one of them getting a run out, maybe some minutes at the end. The way the game played out, it didn't make a lot of sense for that, which is fine. That's... the lineup was interesting in that regard. But other than that, I mean, Eddie Nketiah had a nice goal. PSV got a nice goal to level. We were a quality finish there.
Those goals were oddly similar to each other. They were both deflections off the post to go in kind of a similar angle. They kind of looked like the mirror image of each other. It was kind of funny.
both to the same side into the same goal on the same side of the field.
Oh yeah,
I think ours on one side of the half, theirs on the other. Perhaps the only other interesting thing is, late on, and I guess I wasn't too surprised to see this. Arteta put on, some more, definitely a stronger lineup. Declan Rice came on. Martin Odegaard, Gabriel Jesus made a couple of late subs, obviously trying to chase the win to get the result, which would have been a quality result. And in the end, we did almost get it. The ball was headed into the net, but was called back on an offside. Now, offside is the call that always generates debate, so I'll ask you, what did you think as you saw that coming back?
Yeah, so as we saw it live, it wasn't clear, first of all, who actually headed it in, because Gabriel Magalhaes and Jakub Kiwior both had their heads right near where the ball was. And it was pretty clear, it seemed that they could have been, it definitely looked like it was at least a close call for offside. Once we started seeing the replays, two things became clear. It became clear that actually it bounced off of Kiwior's head to go in, and his body and head, because the head was leading the body, I think, for both of them, was onside. But Gabriel, in spite of not making contact with the ball, was in an offside position. His head was further forward than the last defender. What I recall thinking at the time was that was due to him being in an offside position in a way that affected the play, even though he didn't come into contact with the ball, because he was blocking other players from getting to Kiwior, essentially, is probably what it was, where if he hadn't been in that play at all, or if he'd remained offside, it would have changed, potentially, it could have changed the outcome. Is that pretty much what justifies the offside call there?
Yeah, that's the call. I mean, it's not even necessarily... I mean, the player you're really watching for that's being drawn out of position is the keeper. If the keeper has to make an adjustment to what he's doing because of the presence of a player in an offside position, that's what makes it offside.
Sure.
It's one of those, when it happens in real time, when I watched it in real time, I was like, yes, a goal! Wait, it's coming back. What? And then you watch the replay and go, oh, okay, yeah. I see it. So yeah, I it's frustrating, but I mean, it is the right call. There's always a bit of a judgment call there, but I look at that when I don't have any real complaints about that as a call.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it would have been nice to win, but we got the draw. We only the one loss in Champions League, and thus endeth the Champions League group stage for us.
Yeah.
So, having played our Champions League games, and now having experienced both the excitement and the tension of the Champions League and the Europa League group stages, how has your first season in the Champions League been?
Well, it's funny. Like they're obviously structurally the same. It definitely feels different getting to the end of a Champions League group stage. It's like if we'd gotten eliminated from the Europa League group stage, I don't know how much we would have cared. I think we wanted to see him do well, and it was early enough in the season that we were still looking to that as an indicator of how far they were going to be able to go in the Premier League. But yeah, no, it was fun. It was good seeing the higher level of competition. Like it was, especially we had trouble away. It seemed like we did pretty handily at home. We had trouble away in the Champions League more than I think we often do in the Premier League. I think maybe it's just the unfamiliarity of those venues compared to yeah, sure, Liverpool is tough, but we know what to expect better, right? We're going to be going there this weekend. But yeah, I mean, it was fun. It's good. It feels like it matters to us in a way that the Europa League didn't to the same degree. It did, but not as much.
I mean, I think that's largely right. The only thing I'd add to there is that I think I wouldn't have said it so much as if we had been eliminated from the Europa League, people wouldn't have cared. I think it would have been a problem because it would have been incredibly embarrassing. Like there was no way that's true. Were not good. We were. I mean, again, you saw we weren't terribly good. We were playing a rotated lineup in the Europa League, and we still pretty much qualified fairly easily in a group with PSV. Actually,
right?
Remember, someday you'll draw someone else in that one, but. Yeah, but again, we had what appears to be a relatively soft group. Although I wonder if perhaps if we had played at PSV earlier, and so like we were in a case where our last road game was not PSV, but in fact even going into Seville, and to think because we had talked about that as being the toughest game, and they ended up finishing in fourth.
Yeah.
If we had all of a sudden we're heading into matchday 6 going, all right, we really need a result at Seville, and then we would have gotten it. It would have been fine. But, it's kind of interesting sort of how the sequencing of the games plays out. But yeah, I mean, the Champions League, just the name sort of suggests there's another element to it, and it's fun. It's fun to be back, and overall, I thought we did well. I mean, certainly we spent last year in the Europa League rotating the side heavily. We were able to do that in Matchday 6, but we didn't do that really in the previous ones. We were playing a full-strength lineup in those earlier games.
Right.
And so I think, you can sort of see in terms of the player selection, right, how important this game really is to Arteta and to Arsenal to play those games.
Well, yeah, and you could tell by the way that the game was played. You could tell it didn't matter to them really either. Like they approached it in much the same way. I can't speak to their lineup as much because I'm not familiar with them in that way. But just for one thing, I mean, like the lack of physicality, right? Just like there were almost no fouls that I remember. It was a very milquetoast level of play. Like it was almost like a friendly, which actually brings me to a question that I had. So like we're seeing all these players that don't get as much competition play, and clearly they're obviously training all week with the rest of the team, but as far as what we get to see and as far as them playing against competitors that aren't on their same team, do they get to it all? Like Cedric Suarez, or Mohamed El Neni, do they get to play against players from other teams aside from the handful of times that we see them during the season?
No.
Okay.
I mean, yeah. I mean, you're right. I mean, that's kind of life as a bench player in the Premier League, especially when you're at a club. Well, even a lower level club, who's going to more, rely in some ways very heavily on their starters because those are their best players and they need to stay up or avoid relegation. And obviously for Arsenal, in our case, we need to maintain that performance and that standard. And we have a fairly deep bench. Some of the players we were able to bring off the bench Like, for example, this weekend, to have players like Kiwi or Nketiah, Trossard in particular, to be able to bring off the bench and bring in, does speak a lot to our depth, which is partly how we're able to challenge for the title.
Right.
We're seeing that depth tested a little bit. But as far as those other players, like, you really... Like, even look at the closest you're going to get to truly a second team lineup would have either been what you saw the midweek, or even if you think to the League Cup game we played West Ham. And even then, just looking at the midweek game, as we talked about, you had Gabriel and Saliba. Jorginho spends plenty of time getting play.
Sure.
Trossard play. Like, that was our rotated lineup, and we're still rolling out with our top two center backs. So you just don't have the kind of bodies to be able to put together some kind of regular competition. Their competition comes in practice, in training, and that's where the idea is you practice. People who show well in training end up playing. And Arteta I don't remember if he's necessarily made comments to that effect. I mean, every manager says that, right? If you practice well, only the guys who practice well will play, right? You want to encourage that. But we know there are some guys, if William Saliba has a howler in practice, he's still starting on Saturday. He's Bukayo Saka, Odegaard. We know there are some of those players, but that's partly why they're those starters, because they bring it every time.
Yeah.
There just aren't those opportunities. You will see on occasion the club having friendlies outside of the regular schedule. For a club like Arsenal, that's not going to be a thing they do very often, mostly because they play so many games anyway.
Right.
We're really dealing with fixture congestion, just too many games. Manchester City currently will actually take off next weekend because they are down in Saudi Arabia for the Club World Cup. Having just won the Champions League last year, they're playing in the Club World Cup, and so they will play. I think it's tomorrow, or of course on Monday on Monday night. On Tuesday, it'll be morning in morning or midday in American time. They're going to play in the semifinals of the Club World Cup, and the final is, let me get my calendar, I think on Friday I saw. But yeah, it's just two extra games. And they're still playing 38 games in the league. They're still going to play, obviously they're probably going to go very deep in the Champions League. They could go very deep in the FA Cup. I mean, they're where are you going to squeeze a friendly in for that?
Right.
You need those B team players, so to speak, to be on your bench.
And like you're saying, we don't have enough of them to fill a full squad anyways. So it necessarily means taking away at least a few of our key players who we do expect to play in our regular competition. So yeah, I could see logistically that'd be tough to pull off too, unless you pull off some some youth players, I guess, with them or something like that. But yeah, that not I guess that much benefit to it other than keeping their interest and some level of their skills up a little bit. But
yeah,
I thought of it just seeing the rustiness a little bit when they first came on,
And that's just the nature of the beast. There's only so many minutes to go around. You'll hear some of that in January as we get close to the transfer window. Thinking about guys who are very clearly bench players and perhaps wanting a loan at least to get playing time or even potentially to be sold. I don't like. I heard a thing this morning about there's interest in Italy for Jakub Kiwior and our defense is too thin. I doubt you see too much of that. Who knows if that's coming from him? If that's Italian clubs kind of just, hey Arsenal, what do you think about this? You're going to hear some of that stuff in January. I don't know how. I don't know much, but yeah, like anyone else, you do this to play. Right, you're a professional athlete to play the sport, and when you don't get to do that, when you ride the bench and only play in practice, you're probably going to want to go somewhere where you'll play more. But the only other time I can think of, you occasionally hear about what they're called closed door friendlies, which are essentially glorified scrimmages. Occasionally, you'll do them during the international break. I think we did one earlier this year, and there were a couple. And there were a couple of them that were run out during the World Cup last year because it was held. Well, now actually, I think we're actually I think it's about a year. It's been like a year since that, which is crazy. Yeah. There were. I know Arsenal played. I think we played Milan, a couple other big clubs who were all the bigger teams. We're all missing a few guys in the World Cup, but we certainly have enough people that we can at least have a scrimmage to do essentially what you talked about there, knock the rust off.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. So, how did you feel about our group stage overall for you compared to other seasons, like seeing in the Champions League? I guess is the frame of reference I lack at this point.
Overall, good. We've talked about this. I mentioned a little bit. The sense was that our Champions League group was a little softer than many others. I think, given PSV's overall record, that might actually be a bit overstated. And we talked about Sevilla, who wound up finishing in fourth, who's a pretty good team. So I think that's some of that's just fan banter. It's hard to read too much into it. Overall, I thought we did well. It's very interesting to watch how the European sides play us very differently. How they try generally to be much more open. And then you go to the Premier League and everybody packs 10 guys behind the ball and, they're parking the bus and, looking to beat you on the counter. Right. Whereas here, PSV tried to play with us. Lens tried to play with us. Seville tried to play with us. And at home, we just demolished them, So overall, I thought overall we did well. I think there is still this is still a relatively young team, still a relatively inexperienced team. And so to get that kind of experience in the Champions League in Europe, I think has been good for them. And I think it's only going to continue as we go forward. Seeing how much further we get into the competition. I'm happy with the group stage. We won the group. That's really all that matters. We won the group. That's the good news. And we means we get theoretically the easier matchup starting in the round of 16, and then we'll just kind of see where it goes from there.
Yeah. So what is coming up for us in the round of 16?
So this was drawn this morning at about 5 a.m. my time. So I woke up to the news, which I knew it was coming. I knew it was early in the day, so I wasn't expecting to watch it live or anything. Arsenal has drawn Porto in the Champions League. Porto out of the city of Porto in Portugal. We've played them in the Champions League a couple of times over the years. They are one of the big three in Portugal. Them, Benfica, and Sporting. You may remember Sporting as the team that knocked us out of the Europa League last year.
Right.
As of this recording on Monday morning, Porto is currently third in Portugal, behind Sporting and Benfica. They are the only, I believe they're the only, so the only Portuguese side remaining in the Champions League, which isn't a huge surprise. There usually is always one. Pretty favorable matchup for us. Definitely the one I was hoping to avoid in the draw was Paris Saint-Germain, probably Inter Milan. They both drew other teams, which now no longer are a concern. And then we'll just kind of see how it plays out. They announced, and then so our first leg in Portugal will at the Estadio do Dragão, the Dragon Stadium.
That's a cool name.
That's their. If you look at their crest, it's a little hard to see. There's at the top is there's a crown with a little dragon sitting in it. The Dragon Stadium is their home. We will be there on February 21st. And then the second leg back at the Arsenal Stadium. Remember, we're not the Emirates in Europe. The Arsenal Stadium is on March 12th. So that is the round. That'll be.
Yeah, and so as far as the way that those legs are structured, it's the total goals between the two of them determines the winner?
Right. So it'll be aggregate goal. Yeah, total goals across the two legs. I believe they have. So they got rid of the away goals rule. It used to be the tiebreaker was goals scored, or who scored the most goals in your road games, or your away games. Excuse me. And that they've gotten rid of that though. So now all that matters is whoever scores the most. If after the second leg it is tied, we'll have 30 minutes of extra time. And if somebody doesn't win, then they'll go to a shootout. Pretty much what we saw last year in the Sporting matchup. By the way, just a note on Porto. They finished second in Group H with Barcelona. They won four wins and 2 losses. The 2 losses were to Barcelona. They actually technically were tied on top of the group. What I find most interesting about that is under the old way of doing this, the new way being head-to-head results of the tiebreaker. Under the old way of doing it, which would be based on goal difference, Porto would actually have beaten Barcelona. They were +7, while Barcelona's +6. So they are not a team to sneeze at. They are definitely somebody who could cause us problems. I think we should win. I think we'll be heavily favored. We should win. But we saw Portuguese teams know how to mix it up. Porto is definitely an experienced team that knows how to play in the Champions League. This is not going to be easy. It'll be a good test for us, though, I think, in advance of hopefully getting into the quarterfinals, where we're likely to see one of the bigger boys. Or, they were just as likely saying they're likely to see us as well. I think if you look at it, honestly, looking through it, I think we're probably the fourth favorite for the competition overall, based on who's left in it. Manchester City, Bayern Munich, and Real Madrid being the favorites at this point, but I don't think we're far away from that group. But we'll see how it goes. We have to beat Porto, and that's not going to be an easy thing. But that's February, March's problem. It's not something we need to worry about just yet. We get a nice break from the Champions League, from European competition.
Right. It is funny, the symmetry, like PSV in our group both times last year, this year, and then like round of 16 against the Portuguese team. It's kind of funny. So hopefully we do better this time. What did you say? So I think tie breaking on goal difference makes sense. I know that from the Premier League, it's done that way too. What did you say the tiebreaker was that allowed Barcelona to come ahead from them? I guess they changed that. It must have been this year. Now the tiebreaker is head to head. So basically, how did the two teams do when they played each other? Barcelona won both games, and so that's what you meant by head-to-head. Okay, gotcha.
Right. Now, what's interesting, I mean, obviously you can't. Barcelona's playing the competition that they're given. Had they known that the tiebreaker was in effect, I suspect Barcelona would have tried to score a few more goals in their final game to make sure they would have finished ahead. So sure. I don't want to sit here and say, but it does speak, I think, to Porto's quality. And Barcelona is not a vintage Barcelona. They're definitely not quite at the level they were. Certainly a decade ago when Messi was with them, and when Pep Guardiola was there, and sort of they're a long way from that level of Barcelona, obviously, which is one of the best teams any of us have ever seen.
Yeah.
They ain't that anymore, but or at least not right now. But it speaks to Porto's quality that they would, under the old system, technically they would have actually won that group. So
right.
Again, this is nothing to get cocky about. It's a good draw. It's a draw I'm happy with. But it's gonna take work to win this one.
Yeah. Well, I bet, regardless of how little this PSV match actually mattered, I bet that they were all pretty dehydrated when they got done, right? I wonder if any of them went for a stick of liquid IV in the locker room after. I don't know. Regardless of whether they did, it's something that we encourage Gooner U. We have a partnership with Liquid IV. So it is something that I use after sports activities when I'm active, either playing soccer for myself when my toe isn't broken, or coaching my son, whether my toe is broken or not. I get sweated up, and Liquid IV is there to help me not feel so thirsty after. So it is the category-winning hydration brand fueling your well-being, and their hydration multiplier is the one product you're missing in your daily routine. In just one stick, you get 5 essential vitamins and 2 times faster hydration than with water alone. Use it first thing in the morning before a workout, when you feel run down after a long night out, and on long flights. There are 12 delicious, refreshing flavors to keep your hydration routine exciting, and it is made with non-GMO and it is free, non-GMO ingredients, and free of gluten, dairy, and soy. I personally love that there's no aftertaste to it. And it always leaves me feeling refreshed, and I don't have to go back for more because it leaves you feeling like, you got that like sweet taste in your mouth. You need more of it. Once I finish the 16 ounces of water with the stick of Liquid IV in it, I feel like I'm good to go, and go back for more, depending on if it's if it's at halftime or after everything's all said and done. It's also super convenient to take with me. And as of now, my favorite flavor so far is still strawberry lemonade. We'll see if it gets dethroned when activities resume. We're gonna have some winter clinics for lacrosse and for baseball, so we'll see how that goes. So if that sounds good to you and you want to give Liquid IV a shot, get 20% off when you go to liquidiv.com and use code Gooner at checkout. That's 20% off anything you order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code Gooner. That is GOONER at liquidiv.com. There's also a link in our show notes or description to make it easier. Shop Better Hydration today with Liquid IV. So we had a more exciting match against Brighton, I would say.
Definitely more interesting. Made doubly more interesting, I think, by the fact that the day before, Manchester City had rather shockingly drawn with Crystal Palace. So it was an opportunity to put some space between us and them.
Sorry, I lost you there for a second.
Yeah.
Manchester City had rather was what I got.
Okay. Yeah, but I'd say you popped off and said you were offline and came back. So,
yeah.
All right.
I'm back.
Yeah. So the day before, Manchester City had a rather shocking result, a draw with Crystal Palace. A draw at home to Crystal Palace. Palace is not good away from home. So that's a really weird one to get. But take what you can get, man. So this was a real opportunity for us to put some space between us and them. And the sense was we would play our game against Brighton, a team that has given us a lot of trouble at home since they've come up. They were a good side. They've got some good players. This was not going to be an easy one. And so for us to play the way we did, we were frankly excellent this game.
We were on fire, definitely. Yeah,
a dominant performance. Overall, but you're sort of running into some of the same problems we had with Villa, right? That you dominate your possession, you generate opportunities, but you're not finishing very well, and that's it's a little frustrating. I'm not lying; it was a little frustrating at times.
Oh, by the end of the first half, it was extremely frustrating.
Yes. Yeah, there was a lot going on, but overall, just you do start to worry. Like we generated so many chances. I don't think they had a shot until the second half.
Right.
Just overall was a lot. Probably, frankly, the yellow cards are the most interesting, including Mikel Arteta getting a yellow card again. Apparently, yellow cards are now given out for jazz hands.
Yeah, that is what he was doing.
I don't know. Again, something may have been said that wasn't supposed to be said. I don't know all the things that are being, but plenty of people have complaints. Apparently, remember earlier in the season they were giving out cards for doing the card gesture. Yeah, that's not a thing anymore. We stopped doing that, which isn't.
Yeah, we saw it multiple times this match. Yeah.
I saw you, Mitoma.
Although there was, maybe it was actually the Arteta yellow card where I forget which one it was, but someone got a yellow card for saying give him a yellow card, but the yellow card he was calling for was also given. I remember noticing that.
Yeah, well, that came up because Ben White gives Mitoma the shirt tug, which is okay. It's frustrating because that same foul happens the other direction and doesn't get a yellow card, which okay. Shirt tug is a shirt tug, and except when it's not apparently. But adding in Arteta's dissent from that, it was a bit of a soft yellow, I thought, and then but in Arteta, I guess. Probably said something similar along those lines, and claims he was gesturing at Gabriel Martinelli, which may or may not be true. I don't know, but
yeah.
But those things, those cards or the fouls given, not given, always land a little bit differently when you're frustrated. And you're frustrated because you've been generating so many opportunities, so many chances, and you can't score a goal. And all that stuff starts to add up. You keep waiting for that opportunity where they break the other way and get a goal they don't really deserve, or maybe they deserve, but a lead they don't deserve, and it's just those things sort of add up cumulatively over time.
Yeah, one particular form of the frustrating failure to convert, they were making Brighton's keeper look really good by just repeatedly shooting the ball straight at him. At least 3-4 shots in the first half, and I think some more in the second half, where they were just shooting it straight at him, and all he had to do was scoop it up. It was not. They weren't making him work for it.
Yeah, no, the quality of the shots. I wouldn't say they made him look good. They made his stats look good.
I guess that's what I meant. Yeah,
he had one or two quality saves, but for the most part, it was mostly just the ball. And some of that is on the keeper. Sometimes when the ball comes directly to him, that's a success of positioning. He makes it look easy because he's in the right place.
Yeah, sure.
That being said, I did not think a lot of the shots were terribly high quality. We had a few chances where we end up shooting it into the second deck as opposed to anywhere near the goal. But overall, yeah. I mean, we spent the first half pretty much camped out around their end. Possession was pretty even, but their possession seemed to not go anywhere. We did a great job pressing them up high. We were very aggressive, with our press up at the top of the field.
Oh yeah.
Excuse me.
So they gave a stat on screen during the second half. It was a few minutes after the first goal we scored, where they said we had 40 touches in the opposition box. Brighton had 3. So I was paying attention to their touches in the opposition box after that, and it actually led me to wonder what precisely constitutes a touch in the opposition box. Like, I guess if you're counting touches, is it just literally the ball touching your foot or other playable part when you are standing in the box? Because it was not long after that they passed it into the box and Saliba, or one of our defenders, cleared it away, and that doesn't count, I think, right?
Right. When it's one of those stats that's just exactly what it says it is. They touch the ball while in the box.
And so when you're dribbling it, if you take like 3 dribbling kicks while you're teeing up for your goal and then you shoot it, that would be like 4 touches in the opposition box resulting from one play. Okay.
Yeah, so but think about it in that circumstance, like how I mean, where a touch really gets you. I mean, there's only so much maneuvering you can do with the ball, and and when you get in the box, of course, the space gets compressed. And generally speaking, you don't want to dribble around in the box. You want to get yourself into a position and fire, a shot or a position where you can see the net. You saw that a few times, and this is one of those where the angle on the screen is always so weird because you're kind of low and off to the side, and you see players cutting across, and you want them to shoot. But then you get that view behind the goal or behind them looking straight on the goal, and you realize they can't because the defenders have put themselves in the position, and they just don't have that window to get a good shot on. And that's kind of what we're facing so much, right? So many of these defenders packing in the box, limiting our opportunities. And when stuff like that happens, you almost can't score off of open play. You need set pieces,
which apparently I'm seeing we have the best record in the league for right now. I guess what I wonder about that, so I guess we have the highest number of corner kick goals. I do like the the analytical part of me wonders, okay, but what's our percentage? Like, even so, that's good that we have the highest number, but do we get even more corner kick opportunities than other teams, or is it just that we're better at converting a roughly same number?
My suspicion is, and I haven't looked at the numbers, I suspect it's a little bit of both. I mean, we do generate more corners than most of the league for the same reason that you would expect. We have a lot of possession. We
have a lot of possession. We have a lot of attempts, and when they get blocked, they result.
So certainly, our corners taken versus corners conceded is going to be a very big gap, and so that part certainly makes sense. I suspect we also convert a lot of them as well. And so our numbers are going to look good, because our numbers are. I don't think the numbers are large enough. The disparities are large enough such that, we got 10 corners. We got 10. We got 2 goals off corners. Yeah, but we took 30 of them. I don't think the numbers are quite that large in a disparity. That's the more goals you score, chances are the higher your percentage is going to the better your percentage is overall going to look. Especially as you get further into the season, when after the first 3 weeks, maybe you had a really tough, if you're some poor team like a Burnley or a Sheffield United, and you all of a sudden in the first weeks you're playing Spurs, Arsenal, City, and Liverpool,
like 0 corner kicks.
Your corners or numbers are going to look terrible because you're not going to get any because you're ceding so much possession.
Yeah.
But we're about halfway through. Everybody's played just about everybody at this point, so the numbers are going to start to even out, and by the end of the season, it will even out. Obviously, some teams, City, Liverpool, we would expect, will probably have taken more corners, but conversion of them is also a bit of skill. It's also, I think, a good credit to the kind of coaching we have, and they keep pointing to, I'm sure you're seeing Nico Jover as our set piece coach, the guy sitting there on the bench. And it's interesting to watch how our corners change. There was a stretch there where we were doing nothing but short corners, right?
Right.
Odegaard or somebody runs over and it's a short pass and you see them try to stretch the defense. We haven't done one of those for at least a couple of weeks, as I can recall. Actually, I saw this. This leads us nicely into the goal, the Jesus goal. if you looked, and so I thought this was fascinating. When the play starts, my first thought was, interesting, we don't have anybody on the near post. We don't have anybody on the post closest to where the corner's coming in from. And, sort of the standard way you set up is you have somebody there at the near post. We had nobody there. In fact, if you looked at our players, they were all on the outside of the far post. Mm-hmm. And then right as, I think that was Martinelli taking that one, right as he's taking it, no, it must have been Saka.
Yeah, because the direction it was coming from would have been Saka. Yeah.
Right as Saka's running up, our guys all ran towards basically the 6-yard box and set themselves up there. Gets into the mixer, except one guy. Is he who didn't join that mix?
I didn't see, but I'm guessing Jesus.
It was Gabriel Jesus who hangs behind and sits on the back post. The header gets through, and Gabriel Jesus is entirely unmarked. Now, again, this is one of those, when you watch the whole play develop, it makes sense. It's been set up that way to leave him unmarked.
Right.
But, if all you do is just sort of see the play and the goal, I mean, if you're a Brighton fan, understandably, be furious. How did you leave him unmarked? And they didn't. The play was designed to get him open. Yeah. And it worked. And it was, he has a real solid, just a class header, just dumps it in 1-0 to the Arsenal.
Made even more remarkable by, it wasn't a header plucked straight out of the air. It was off of a deflection of a Brighton player's head. So he was able in the moment to adjust his approach. And that's what blew my mind about it, was he took that could have completely killed the opportunity, like where it just landed in a weird way and he wasn't able to end up getting it in, but he was actually able to still do more or less what it looked like he was there to do with it. So
yeah, I mean, he's in position there. I mean, some of it's the adjustment. I mean, that's also why sometimes you throw the corner into the mixer, because if you're the defender, you're also reacting very quickly to the ball, and sometimes all you can do is just get ahead to it and hope it wasn't your own net.
Ben White, I still haven't forgotten that.
That you just do your best to try and get to it, and he does well to get to it, but he only gets a slight deflection on it, ends up coming to Jesus, who knocks it in. And as I said, 1-0 to the Arsenal. And ideally at this point, what you start to see is Brighton now is chasing a result. They're going after it. This is a team that scores goals. I think they showed the stat there that's been like 30 games or something.
32. It was going into yesterday. It was 32 matches where they've both were 32 where they'd scored, and then I think it was 20 or something. It was in the 20s that they'd also been scored against. Yeah, so that streak continues.
Right, that one continued. But I mean, you would think with a club like that to go forward, it wants to go forward, wants to push, wants to be aggressive, and they need to because now they're chasing the result, and that theoretically would open up some chances for us. The counterpoint to that is that to a large extent, we didn't let them. Now, they did have a couple of chances, including that one that was from, I think it was from Gross, just wide, which...
Yeah, as a nail-biter, yeah.
That was a little...
that whole play, it was like the dominoes slowly falling, and it felt like this was going to be it. Just crisis narrowly averted.
It is interesting. The more you watch anything, you start to develop that sense of like, oh, I don't like this. I don't like this. I don't like this. I don't like this. And then you wind up giving up, a goal or sometimes a chance. And sometimes, one definitely had that feeling, but he missed.
Yeah, I mean, I see what you're talking about. Like, you kind of get a sense of which breakaways are dangerous and which ones like, oh, yeah, he broke away, but they'll take care of that. I'm not worried about it. Like, there are a couple varieties, and it's that was a dangerous one.
Yeah, they were able to generate that chance, and it's one of those. What's the old line? Deserves got nothing to do with it. Like, we didn't. We deserved a result. We deserved this. In most cases, if you deserve it so much, then score the goal. But boy, that would have been undeserved. For Brighton to get a result. I mean, again, we dominated them throughout the game. I mean, really, and they are a really talented team. They're also in Europe. They're clearly getting stretched roster wise. So you could start to see how that European competition is taking a toll on their depth. They were missing. I think they said they were missing a couple of key players.
Yeah, it sounded like injuries. They had a bunch of injuries they were contending
right,
with.
and I mean, so do we, and that's just how it goes. At this stage, that's how it goes. Really, in the season, injuries are an important part of all of this. But it was, they are a dangerous team. They're a good team, and so to dominate them in the way we did was pretty impressive. I'm largely happy with it. I'm certainly happy with it overall. It would have been undeserved, and then to the icing on the cake, of course, was 60 million down the drain. Kai Havertz scores again. He's definitely getting more confident. He's definitely looking like he's.
Yeah, I mean, he did still have the similar kind of like missed opportunity earlier in the match, but yeah, he made up for it. So yeah,
yeah, he got the chance and he took it, and it was a real quality finish. And again, that song cracks me up. It's the Havertz song. I don't know why, but it really does. But anyway, it's that's a good win. It's a good performance. And I've been looking here. I've been trying to find. Arteta had a comment after the game about the quality, and De Zerbi, the Brighton manager, sort of said something similar. Like, Brighton is a good team, and to beat them, to dominate them in the way we did, and to beat them, is it is a really good result, especially heading into the holidays. Sort of the next, we talk about the next phase of the season. We now have a week off, and we don't have a midweek game for the first time in a couple weeks, and we head into the holidays. It's a good result to get us there.
Well, and I mean, it's as if somebody was like scripting the results, where so we pull off a not super easy victory earlier in the day yesterday, with Liverpool still yet to play their match. So I was watching the replay. I was watching it at night after both matches had been long done at that point, and I hear Rebecca Lowe or someone saying, like, we'll need to see what the result is. And then I start looking, I was like, oh, they drew. Oh, man. And so then I watched the last 5 minutes against United that Liverpool played, and I saw the draw happen. And yeah, so we're top of the table again because they dropped points. So
yeah, Liverpool had 34 shots.
Oh, my God.
And didn't score. Now, apparently, a lot of them weren't very good ones. They're not a lot of high quality there, but still, and this was shocking. I mean, Manchester United, their record looks okay, but they have not been good. They got dumped out of Europe in the Champions League. That hasn't been helpful to them. The last time they played, last year when they played this game, Liverpool beat them 7-0. The other game last year they played them twice, 7-0 and 4-0 to Liverpool. So they have hammered United recently, and that's an old rivalry. That's not a huge surprise that, when given the chance, Liverpool will rub United's face into it. That's an old rivalry, the two northern cities. But yeah, to come away with the 0-0, that's. Yeah, boy, that is interesting. But we're right up there. Aston Villa got a win as well. They are, I think long term they'll probably fall away, but they're right in it, and there's a pretty good chance. They're actually going to be, they might end up being top of the league. They actually are going to start. By the end of the weekend their game is on Friday. They're home to Sheffield.
Oh, okay.
Dreadful Sheffield. And as we'll talk about in a moment, obviously Arsenal and Liverpool, one of them is going to drop points.
The last piece that looks like it was scripted, like it was like, so we pull ahead of them just in time to play them, and that's going to obviously have a big effect on the top of the table.
Yeah, I mean, there's a pretty good chance Villa will, I mean, we say probably, I mean, you never know. It's Premier League. Anyone can beat anybody, but there's a pretty good chance we're going to enter the game on Sunday, or enter Saturday's game, both of us looking up at Villa. and there is a non-zero chance that Villa is on top of the table at Christmas.
Right.
Which is wild to think about.
Yeah.
But that's we'll again we'll see how that goes. Good for Villa for being in that position. We'll see how that plays out. But yeah, it's tight up there as we enter the holidays. As we enter this, we'll talk about sort of the stretches of the season. And this, I think, is the next real stretch, is getting us through the holidays and into the beginning of January when we hit the FA Cup.
Right. All right. So who would you call for Player of the Week?
This was an interesting one because, of course, we were so heavily rotated midweek. I think you could put in a good shout for either of the center backs, Gabriel or Saliba, because of their, for playing both games. Well, probably not Gabriel because he did kind of cost us the win at Eindhoven.
Yeah.
but I actually think I'm actually going to say Jesus. I think, because we were very dangerous late on when he came on the field in the PSV game. He converts the opportunity. He creates so many things when he's on the field. I'm going to say Gabriel Jesus. I almost said Martin Odegaard, but he had a couple of really tough misses in the Brighton game where, if we didn't score 2 goals, would have really come back to haunt us. So sorry, Martin Odegaard, you only had a really good week as opposed to a Player of the Week. So I'm going to say Gabriel Jesus. That's what I saw.
All right. For me, so Jesus was in the running. I ultimately was really impressed this time by Martinelli, even though I don't think had a goal contribution even. I don't think it worked out yesterday, but he had a really great match, like just constantly for the number of corner kicks he took alone, it was a lot. There was a period there where it was just like corner kicks like every minute. But a lot of the threats that we were generating, putting the pressure on them all throughout the match, were all coming from that left side so much of the match, which is different for us. Usually our threats are very heavy on the right side with Saka and Ben White. So seeing that was good. And, it was another week where I'm seeing him in his superior form. Like, we'd lost that for a little bit, but it looks like he's in good shape. So yeah. One last thing I wanted to pose to you. It's a question I've been wondering about for a while, and it definitely seemed to be the case again this week, as it was also last week. When substitutions are made, I very often notice that if goals have been scored, assuming we're talking about like late second half substitutions, like at least midway through the second half, it seems like anyone who has scored a goal is very likely to be substituted out. Not quite guaranteed, but very likely to be one of the first substituted out. Is that a coincidence, or is there a reason for that? What's going on there?
So there's 2 angles to that. One, I think, is coincidental, because you notice them because they're the goal scorer, so you're thinking about them as they come off. But I think the other one, which may lend credence to what you're seeing, is that in a lot of cases, the subs are made tactically. So the goal scorer comes off because, well, you're up late and you want to sub off a forward player, an attacking player, for a defensive player. The idea being we need to pack it in, hold down the game. So chances are that's probably what's going on. What it really is more the tactical shift of removing an offensive player for a defensive player. Other than that, every sub is kind of its own story. You don't really know who's maybe nursing an injury, or maybe somebody's coming back, and so like, okay, they're going to play 60, 70 minutes, and then we'll take them over, So I think it's just one of those, not so much the goal scorer himself is the one who's taken off, but rather the role he fills is either being switched or changed, is probably what you see. It does lead to a nice moment. The guy who scores the goal is coming off, and so gets a nice round of applause as he walks off. And of course, as you take your time coming off the field, they'll clap to the fans as well, which is always nice.
Oh, yeah. I guess part of why I was wondering it is, statistically, do you think that it's like, well, they've scored a goal, there's only a certain % chance that any given player is going to score in a given match, and so get him out of there, he's had his goal, put someone else in there who can maybe score instead, but it sounds like probably not. No.
I get what you're saying on that, but no, that's not how any of them actually think of. He's due is the gambler's fallacy, right?
Right.
It keeps coming up heads. It's definitely going to come up tails this time. Nope, 50-50 every time. Actually, I did something about this. It's actually 51-49 to come up heads. Fun fact: always call heads.
Interesting. The weight on the coin?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if it's a new coin, the older it gets, everything just smooths down. It's basically the same. But especially newer coins, call heads.
Oh, talk to Harvey Dent. All right, so what's coming up for next week?
Next week, just one game, no midweek game, but boy, what a game it is. On Saturday, Arsenal goes to Anfield, and we'll play Liverpool. Massive game in the league. Massive game, for both of us, obviously being up near the top, thinking about Champions League, not just Champions League spots, but thinking about the title race. Interestingly enough, we are actually about to play Liverpool 3 times in the space of about a little more than a month, because we are going to play them, obviously, this weekend, our last game before the holiday, before Christmas. We will then play them in the FA Cup. We drew them at home on January 7th. Well, the first weekend of January, in our case, will be that's the 7th, that's Sunday. And then we will actually play them. The home Premier League game is on February 3rd, which, because of the way the season played out, that is the last time we'll play Liverpool this year.
Right.
Because they are not in the Champions League, so we can't draw them. We're done with our league games with them, and one of us is going to be out of the FA Cup. So,
right.
And they may still be in the League Cup. I don't know. I don't care. We're not in it, so it doesn't matter. But
yep.
So yeah, we're going to see Liverpool, Liverpool and Arsenal are going to play each other 3 times over the next looks like 7 weeks.
Right.
It's pretty wild, and some of this is it really just depends on how you say it, right? On the one hand, we're locked in here with them, but also they're locked in here with us. So,
yeah. Yeah, cool. Looking forward to it. That one's going to be on NBC and also streaming same time at Peacock. As I found out with some match a couple weeks ago, that when World Soccer Talk says NBC and Peacock, yes, it is simulcast to both places, so you can stream it or watch it with a cable subscription. So, well,
it's NBC. It's over the air. You don't need cable for that.
Yes, rabbit ears.
It's funny. Random side story. So actually, so I have AT&T as my cable. AT&T is apparently currently in a dispute with KHOU, which is the CBS affiliate in Houston, which is particularly funny because CBS is the one who broadcasts the NFL team, the Houston Texans. So since I have AT&T, I can't actually watch the local team. Although the newspapers at one point they suggested, you could always just get rabbit ears. You could always just get the antenna and you could watch then, or most likely go to a bar.
Yep.
There are also other ways to stream games that may or may not be shown that we're not going to talk about over the air like this, matey.
We will encourage everything to be on the up and up.
Yes. We do not encourage sketchy websites on the
All right, well, thanks for joining us at Gooner U. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and some other places, and we appreciate you subscribing to our show and sharing it with friends. If you're watching on YouTube, and if you're not, please try it. I think you'd like it. Like and subscribe. To support the show even more, you can become a Gooner U superfan for ad-free episodes and bootleg recordings available the night we record, plus bonus segments sometimes. And always a little extended segment after we're done. We banter for a little bit before we stop recording. So it's only $1 a month, and there's a link in the show notes to join. Thanks again to our sponsor, Liquid IV. You can find them with our special link in the description, and you can follow our show on Twitter at Gooner U Show for updates and to ask questions. Again, my name is Dove. You can find me on Twitter at Dove Frankel. With me, as always, is Keith, and you can find him in a pub watching Arsenal matches.
Come on, you Gunners.